Watch this video and you'll never mess up an acid-base question again. 5 questions, that's what you need, first of all, with the 5th question being the most important and what makes you amazing at acid-base, not just good. First, is it acidosis or alkalosis? Second, is it respiratory or metabolic? Third, is there compensation? Fourth, if metabolic acidosis, then what's the anion gap? And 5th, if there is a gap, is there a second hidden disorder, delta, the one that I really think will help you understand it better. First, this is basic. pH less than 7.4, acidosis more than 7.4, alkalotic. Usually the range is 7.35 to 7.45, but for this framework, we'll split it at 7.4. Perfect, you got this. Second, the Rome thing. Everybody knows this. Respiratory opposite, metabolic equal. What does that mean? pH goes up, CO2 goes down. pH goes down, CO2 goes up. So essentially, respiratory acidosis or respiratory disorders, pH and CO2 move in opposite directions. In metabolic disorders, pH and bicarb move in the same direction. Got it? Perfect. Next. Is compensation appropriate? The body is always trying to compensate. Lungs will blow off carbon dioxide to fix metabolic problems. Kidneys will retain or dump bicarb to fix respiratory ones. The exam question isn't just, is there compensation? The question is the compensation appropriate? Or is there a second process hiding underneath? Simple teaching point, okay? You don't need to memorize every compensation formula to get the concept. The key idea is mild compensation is expected. If the pH is fully back to normal or compensation is way more or less than expected, then that's your clue. There's more than one disorder happening at once. You don't need to know the Winter's formula for the real life or for your exam, honestly. This formula, however, you can remember, which is just a 9 gaps formula, sodium minus chloride and bicarb. This is like something basic. Normal is 8 to 12. And the next thing, everybody knows this, but gap or no gap? You did this formula. If there is a 9 gap, the MUDPILES, this is something unfortunately you have to remember, but methanol, urea, DKA, propylene glycol, isoniazid, lactic acidosis, ethylene glycol, salicylate, all of these cause an anion gap acidosis. No gap is bicarb loss, GI, renal tubular acidosis. So no gap, you're losing bicarb, not making acid. You're losing something. You need to remember there was this clothing company called Gap, and apparently they had a lot of hate recently, so a lot of acid was thrown at them. So you can always think gap means acid problem. No gap is you're losing bicarb. Okay, next. The most important point, delta. The hidden disorder check. So this is a step almost nobody explains or wants to remember, including me. So if you only remember one thing from this video, make it this one. When there's an anion gap acidosis, compare how much the gap has risen to how much the bicarb has fallen. If they don't match, there's a second process going on, right? So if gap goes up by X, the bicarb has to go down by X. If bicarb goes down a lot more than the gap actually went up, then there's a second non-gap acidosis hiding. Non-gap, right? Because if the bicarb is going down, then the gap is going up. There has to be a second sort of a non-gap acidosis hiding somewhere. If the bicarb goes less, then the gap goes up, then there's a second metabolic alkalosis thingy happening in the back. There are some caveats like lactic acidosis, for example. In lactic acidosis specifically, the 1-to-1 ratio doesn't really work because the expected ratio is close to 1. 0.6 means for every 10 MEQ rise in anion gap, the bicarb actually falls only about 6. Likely because the kidneys don't really clear the lactate, as compared to the keto anions. In the keto acidosis, the ratio is closer to 1-to-1. And also the delta is an approximation. There was some research and they suggest that you can tolerate up to 5 MEQL around the expected value before diagnosing a mixed disorder. So you can have a difference of 5 and that's okay. And the third most important thing, especially in hospital medicine, is albumin levels, okay? Because people will have a lot of hypoalbuminemia, and that will lower your anion gap, like the baseline anion gap, like 2.5 MEQ per 1 decrease in albumin, so which will mask like a high anion gap acidosis and distort the analysis. Because if you you have like, let's say 25 anion gap, but like it's only going to show you like 21, and then the bicarb is 21, it's not equal. There could be a mixed disorder going on. So this is essentially how acid base sort of works. Let's do a quick remembrance. 1, acidosis, alkalosis. Just look at the pH. 2, respiratory or metabolic. Remember, Rome for that. 3, check if the compensation makes sense. Is it too much? Is it normal? 4, if metabolic acidosis, calculate the gap. MUDPILES for the causes. 5, delta delta. Check if the numbers actually match, because that's where the hidden second disorders live. So that's a full framework, 5 steps, and you can work through almost any ABG on exam day, even if you've never seen one before. And let me know which step actually trips you up, and I'll do a deeper follow-up on that part specifically. Or if you want to see a video explaining the causes behind these, like how does methanol do it, or go really deep dive into understanding the acid base, I can do that too. Just let me know. And if you are worried about posterior circulation stroke, that's a video on my page too. And I hope you do well on your exam if you are studying for one. Thank you.